Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. Not legal advice. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, have your pet subscribe, have anybody subscribe. I'll take anybody. Anyway, I hope everybody is well this Sunday morning. It's my morning looking outside, my Sunday morning here in California. As you can see, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's I think about 68 degrees today and partly cloudy skies. Very nice day. I have a bunch of things that I wanted to kind of talk about. Hopefully they will be of interest. I will, of course, address briefly GTI at some point in time, like in 2 minutes, somewhere within this. But I kind of want to go over a bunch of things that kind of struck my interest, and hopefully they will strike yours or they won't. I will find out either way. Before I go on, and you will see, because I'm going to address it later on, but today's episode is brought to you by KLACC, which is also known as the Not Legal Advice Crap Coin. Please buy them. And before we get into the substance, I believe I found 3 things that struck my interest. By the way, if you all are crypto people, any of you, and you know about staking your crypto, if you're a vegetarian, can you have proof of stake? I don't know if you can, but dogs hate driving because they can never find parking spaces. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Is it true that if a frog's car breaks down, it gets towed away? I'm not sure if that's true. And last but not least, why do bees hum? They don't remember the lyrics, of course. Anyway, so I want to start off talking about, so I'm going to talk about a little bit about Cassava Sciences, TikTok, GTII, crypto, MicroStrategy, and last but not least, earthquakes, since it's California and we had a 7.0 earthquake this week, and I thought it was interesting. So I'm going to start off with Cassava Sciences. The reason I'm going to start off Cassava Sciences, because that involved a short report. And Cassava Sciences was I'm going to say was, because it sounds like it's now done, but Cassava Sciences was a company that created a potential drug for the treatment of moderate to severe, I think it's moderate to severe, Alzheimer's. And it used some drug called simifulin. That's about as close as I can get to it. I'm just going to refer to it as the drug from this point in time. And I got involved in it, I think in 2021. I had an interest in it because I think that's a huge problem for the world, Alzheimer's, and the costs are extreme. And if you could find a cure for it, that would be a big benefit to society. So I started following this because it was a publicly traded company. There were a lot of retail interest, and I don't remember when I first got into it. I bought some shares. The stock rocketed, and then it dumped. I mean, it rocketed. I think it went, if I recall, it went from like 8 to like 140 quickly. And I knew very little about kind of managing that kind of position. Not that I know much more now, but I knew less then. So it was kind of surprising. And during this process, I recall there was a citizens petition that was filed with the FDA, the SEC, or one of those regulatory bodies that may cease to exist after Doge is done. And you have the right to file these citizens' complaints. So if somebody's providing a drug that they want to come to market and you have reason to have an issue with it in some respect, you can file a petition directly to challenge the drug. And that's what happened. And that happened, I believe, in 2022, 2021, somewhere in that prime frame. Oh, August of 2021, I found it. What was interesting was that petition was filed by doctors and shorts. So after that, what happened was there was a whole campaign that was managed by the company and its leadership, claiming that this was a short attack, it was improper, etc., yada, yada, yada. Now, I've been down this road, so I'm not a big fan of the regulatory bodies. If you've heard any of my videos, I do not like the regulatory bodies. I'm not a big fan of Congress, of the government itself. But in this case, the claim was, besides that, the claim was against management. And I know there's a tendency, I'm not saying to take, when management is accused of misconduct or acting improperly, I'm not saying you should accept anything that is said against management. However, on the flip side, you should be open to considering any reasonable arguments that are made against management and shouldn't be blind. Obviously, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you're blind, you end up missing things, make more mistakes, etc. So 2021, we have this, basically it's like a short report, but it's a petition that's filed, but it's portrayed as a short attack. It's portrayed such as a short attack that in November of 2022, Cassava, the company, filed a defamation action against the various parties who were making claims about the integrity of the research itself. And it claimed, in effect, that the research was fabricated. And the way it worked was there was a consultant that was involved, who was a professor in the medical school, I think at CUNY, and he was basically administering the trials and doing a lot of the work. And at some point in time, there was a problem in the way the studies were presented, and it suggested some inaccuracy. And there was a subsequent report that came out that questioned the accuracy further. So while this is going on, though, in the background, management and retail, because retail believes this, believes this is all a short report scam, etc., because their stock value got hammered. And it doesn't change the fact, by the way, that there are shorts or others who may attack, especially medical, bio research, etc., that they go after those kind of companies because they require a lot of capital and they're just ripe for shorting. So that is going on, and retail is screaming, and they're screaming about all kinds of other things: AMC, GME, obviously MMTLP. And so it's in the background of that, the argument that it's a short attack it's much more persuasive, or in the background, it has more persuasive power. I think in 2023, the university says there's something that's ran amok, but at the same time, still competing. People are getting hammered in the stock because the value never came back. And I believe, although I'm not sure, I think insiders were selling at various times, especially at the high point. So somebody is making lots of money. So all this is going on. And again, in the background of we as retail shareholders are all complaining about improper short sales, etc. 2024, June of 2024, this consultant was charged by the feds with major fraud, wire fraud, for defrauding the National Institute of Health, which I don't know if will still exist, but it exists as of that time. He defrauded them out of $16 million in grants, which would subject him, if he's convicted, to 20 years in federal prison. So that's Dr. Wang, and he was the one who was accused of being involved in the manipulation of the data. This wire fraud is separate from his work with, or the allegations with regard to, Cassava Science. So July of 2024, the CEO and vice president of Cassava both stepped down. CEO is named Barbier, Barbier. And the chief, basically medical officer, is Burns, and they both stepped down. On a press release as of October 9th, 2024, the company, Cassava Science, indicated they intended to go forward with phase 3 of their study. After being charged by the SEC, basically with fraud, that's my characterization, the company, Cassava, and this would have been October, agreed to pay a $40 million fine. And the basic charge was that the company was charged with presenting misleading data from a phase 2B trial and misled investors about clinical results. And again, we're talking about Alzheimer's disease. So this is really severe. And these are families that are looking for relief. And it appears that management during this whole time has been pulling a fast one. Looks like it, or at least that's what the allegations are, that management is kind of manipulated data, misled everyone, not only taking investor money, but really misled the families of the victims in the study. I find that reprehensible, that act of not only destroying the belief, but really taking everybody's money and giving false hope to families who are seeing their loved ones disappear. It is really, it's horrendous. So company agreed to pay $40 million and basically, not do any bad stuff anymore. Barbier and Burns agreed to fines. I think one was like $75,000, one was like $150,000 approximately, and agreed to injunctions not to do anything like that again, and agreed to a bar from being an officer or director of any public company for three years for, I believe, Burns, and 5 years from Barbier. So they got excluded. They can't be officers and directors anymore. And they agreed to that. They consented that. And usually in these consents, you're not admitting to liability. You're agreeing to a punishment without admitting to a liability. That's kind of what happened. Wang, as to that matter, so we had two different matters. One where the SEC went after him for misleading information about the drug simofilum, or the drug, I should have said. And two, where he was charged for ripping off the NIH. Two different things. He agreed to also a cease and desist, a $50,000 fine, and not to do bad anymore. I don't know if he's still with CUNY. So we had this starting in 2021. They present this great suggestion of a cure for Alzheimer's. They get attacked. They attack defamation. They file an action. They eventually dismiss the action, obviously, because it turned out that what was claimed in 2021 was actually accurate. And as of November 25th, so that's about 10 days ago, in a PR, they acknowledged in a PR that the drug doesn't work and there are going to be no further trials. That's it. And sorry, folks, notwithstanding that appears they may have ripped off, millions of dollars from investors and stolen the hearts. Really, I can't tell you how much it pisses me off, how much in which they really tugged at the heartstrings of the families, really. And to the extent that it is proven that this was a ripoff and a knowing ripoff, I strongly encourage, and I urge all the out there that also just find this behavior abhorrent, encourage the local feds to go after these guys, because you can't rip off investors, and you can't steal the hearts of the family members who are basically giving you their family to conduct trials on. Again, reprehensible. So this was a case, Cassava Science, where everybody thought it was a fake short report, but in the end, it turned out to be 100% accurate. So I guess the lesson to be learned is, notwithstanding how much you believe in something, really, be open. So if you get information that should cause you to be concerned, be concerned. Don't be paranoid. I'm not suggesting being paranoid, but here there was a long history. And if the evidence suggests something, then follow it. Don't block it. Don't block it. Because people have a tendency, and I see it with, because I've done a bunch of Tesla videos with Farzad. If you're really supportive of something, sometimes you just don't want to hear any bad news and you won't welcome it and won't use it. And sometimes you need to use it. Just like Cassava Sciences, at some point in time, I got out. I got out of the stock probably like 3 years ago. I just felt too uncertain. I don't think I lost any money because I think I bought it at the right time and it took a big hike, but I think I didn't make any big money on it either. But anyway, I find that really reprehensible. I encourage everybody to reach out to the DA, I think it's in Texas, to the Attorney General. And I really think that these people deserve to suffer the consequences. So that's Cassava Sciences. It's an interesting story. And if you may want to look into it. And again, if you see reports, just be aware. Do your own due diligence, but be open-minded. That's all, most importantly. Just be open-minded. I'm not telling you to distrust all management, but be open-minded. Because again, in my quick search here, there's a lot of bad actors in the securities business, and it goes from regulators to government, but to the companies themselves too, where it applies. So be alert. Next, and this is a quickie. There was a appellate court decision. I forgot where it was, but TikTok won't be able to operate, I think, past January unless ByteDance sells to a non-Chinese company. I think it has to be an American company. Now, it was a decision of a district court. So the way the court system works up in federal court, just to remind you, because I forget myself at times, you have the district court, which is basically the trial court. Then you have a series of appellate courts, and then you have the Supreme Court. And those district courts are within various circuits, like where I'm in on the West Coast is the Ninth Circuit, which includes California, Nevada, Washington, et cetera, and a bunch of other states. And there's a bunch of those circuits. And within those circuits, they're divided into appellate panels, and those appellate panels are divided into bigger district courts. So the most courts are the district courts, fewer appellate courts, and then we get to the Supreme Court. That's the federal system. The state system has their own separate system. State court, depending where you are, and let's use California as an example. So there's a trial court level, which would be the Superior Court. Then there's an appellate court level, and then there's a state Supreme Court level. And then theoretically, if you took a matter that went all the way up to the state Supreme Court, then you could ask the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene. So that there's possibly, from a state perspective, there's 4 avenues. But usually, obviously, the Supreme Court is not going to take the case because the Supreme Court doesn't have to take the case. The appellate court has to, in either federal or state. So if you lose a trial or win a trial, you're subject to being appealed in every case. But once it gets decided on appeal, then it's discretionary. And the next court up, whether it be the state Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court, doesn't have to hear it. That's purely discretionary. There's maybe a few very narrow exceptions, but that's kind of how it goes. So here we have a decision against TikTok that'll shut them down. So I would think that there's going to be an appeal, probably a request for a stay, or a bond might be posted, or a sale could happen. It'll be interesting to see what happens about this, because I think one of the donors to Trump was the owner or a big player in TikTok. And I think he's an American. And I think he provided a lot of financing for the campaign. And I think this would work against his interests. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with regard to TikTok. But I know this discussion's been going on, and this is the first formal decision that said that they're going to have to cease operations. And that would be January of 2025. GTII. GTI, quick update. So again, GTI is a company that is affiliated, or at least people find it affiliated with Alpine. Alpine is still functioning. GTI is currently, there's a receiver who is running the company. By the way, I have no control over anybody, including the receiver, all the counsel. I'm just a plaintiff like everybody else, and I just inquire, and I have a good relationship with counsel, so I try to pass that on whenever I can. So the most recent information is, again, that they're working on it, that the next report will come out in January. I think there's also a court hearing, like a follow-up court hearing on that day. So the way the legal proceedings are going on now, there is a receiver who's basically a trustee of the court who is operating, and he's trying to complete the audit, which is not complete as of the end of November. That's my information. To get as much money, cash, stock back in. If stock is, and by the way, he gets paid by whatever he brings in. So as opposed to a monthly fee. So oftentimes the problem with receiverships is they only function, and I have experience with receiverships. And again, I'm not vouching or critiquing the receivership, but the way receivership works usually is the receiver charges a fee, like an hourly fee, and they generate a big monthly bill. And the receiver also oftentimes would then hire his or her own law firm to handle the legal work. And they would often then generate a huge ongoing monthly fee that would drain the assets of the company. That was the problem. For people that don't understand how receiverships work, that is a big issue that's in all receiverships. In this particular one, and I don't know who came up with the idea, but I think it's a brilliant idea, the compensation comes only from recovery of assets or the return of stock. So recover assets brings money right back into the company. So I don't see a negative to that. And the return of stock provides it's non-dilution or undilution or redilution or back dilution, whatever you want to call it. It makes the stock more valuable. So if you return stock, you have less shares outstanding. That's to the benefit of shareholders. So that's how that's proceeding. So I don't know since the last report, and the last time we went over the last report, which was like 50 pages long, and the next report, we'll go over that too. And if I get any other additional information, I will let you know. But my understanding is that since the last report, that subpoenas have been issued and were out. I don't know if they've been served. I think they were issued to parties that either have monies that are claimed to be owed to GTII, or they have documents and information. Again, haven't seen the subpoenas, if in fact they have gone out, but if they have gone out, I would expect that in the next report, we will get a report as to the status of those subpoenas, what they might have turned up, and where that goes from that. So I expect the next report in January. I think the last communication I had with anybody related to GTII was last week. And obviously, if I hear anything in the meantime, I will let you guys know. In terms of Alpine, they won theoretically they won their appeal, which just means that the incompetent SEC and FINRA have to now go forward with the expedited expulsion proceeding, which they started. And again, I don't know why it's called expedited if we're like 48 years into this, but it's called expedited. Now they have to go through that. They have to complete it. Then they can expel them subject to an SEC review. And then after that, then they can file an appeal in court. So again, and then there's the Utah stuff, and that's still kind of on hold. I think the SEC is waiting. And I don't know how that will be handled. All I know is the SEC takes their merry time to complete anything. I hope in the Doge review that the efficiency of the SEC and FINRA is reviewed, because there's no way that it should take a year, 2 years, 3 years for the SEC to complete their review of these things. And if it does, then they shouldn't be operating. There should be somebody else operating it. These should be done, if the FINRA arbitrations are done in 6 to 12 months, then there's no reason why the entire process of the SEC, FINRA, et cetera, shouldn't be done in 6 months, period. Not dicking, excuse my language, but not dicking around and stretching it out like they do. So there's no reason why Alpine should continue to exist. I've gone through their history, all their penalties, their attempt at having somebody who was a convicted sex offender be their point person with regulators. That one just always gets me. But anyway, it shouldn't go on. But my guess is still, and this is just a guess, that the GTI side will finish before the Alpine side will finish. I'm hoping the GTI side will finish as I hope it does. And maybe eventually the Alpine side will finish that way. My understanding is that there have been, although I don't know who they have been because I'm not representing any of them or involved with them, nor have I been involved in any discussions with them, with the receiver, but I think there's at least 3 different parties that have been in contact with the receiver with regard to potential opportunities. Again, always strikes me funny that people are interested in a company that is basically untradeable at this point in time. But again, a concentrated short position at some point in time, at least it existed at some point in time, and a shareholder base that still pays attention. So we'll keep it going. I'll keep you apprised. And again, I'm expecting that sometime in 2025, I'm hoping sometime in 2025, maybe mid-year, or this is all speculation on my part, that it'll be tradable again. That's my hope. But it won't be until the audit is completed. I expect the audit to be completed soon, but I have no communication with the auditor, nor would the auditor speak to me. And that would be appropriate, by the way. But I'll keep you apprised at that. Okay, crypto. Everywhere I see now, because we're in the crypto cycle. So do I have crypto? Yes. What do I have? I have IBIT, which is the BlackRock ETF that owns Bitcoin. And they have quite a bit of Bitcoin there. And so the way it works is if I buy the ETF, they have to acquire an amount of Bitcoin to match up with my buy. So, and it's under custody of somebody else. And if I sell it, the reverse happens. So through the ETF, I'm theoretically a holder of Bitcoin. I also am in a BitX. And by the way, this is no recommendation of anything. I'm just throwing this out just so you know what I'm doing. I'm also in a leveraged Bitcoin ETF, which I've been in for a while. I'm also in a leveraged Ethereum ETF, which I've been in for a while. And I've been in and out of MicroStrategies and some of the miners, the Bitcoin miners. The Bitcoin miners are, their business is they acquire in their work Bitcoin. In essence, they get paid for it, and then the Bitcoin has value. And now there's some other tactics that are being involved. But everywhere, and I'll get into that in a second, but everywhere I look on YouTube, I see people doing videos on crypto, and everybody is pushing something or claiming something. And I can see it's very dangerous because it seems like the enthusiasm is pretty high. And if this crypto cycle goes like everyone else, and again, not a prediction, but it will blow up. It's in the process. It'll blow up, I mean, in a positive way, through most of or part of 2025. And then all of a sudden, the floor is going to fall out. And so if you're following all these crypto videos and you don't get in at the right time, like everything else, you could be left holding the bag if it follows the course as it has in the past. So it just concerns me. And everybody be careful. And again, use your own judgment. Don't accept any word that anybody says on face value. Do your own work, just so you can have a level of comfort that you're not getting screwed. So what I find interesting is some of the ways that the crypto market's being enhanced, or derivatives are being created. So, like I said, there's IBIT, which is a crypto for Bitcoin, and now there's options on that. And then there's like MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy is basically a Bitcoin, a leverage, super leveraged Bitcoin play. And what do I mean by that? So they buy Bitcoin, and have, I guess, for many years now. They buy Bitcoin, but the strategy they use now is they use 0% bonds. So what they do is they've gotten investors to lend them money, convertible. Generally, most of it's convertible, so it can be converted to stock at some future point in time. But they're getting 0% interest on the money. And the stock price has to go up something on the order of like 50%. At least that was kind of the suggestion, for them to be in a position where they can convert. And if it doesn't, they just get their money back with 0% interest, theoretically. And what he's able to do, though, is to borrow in 2024 at 0% and pay back 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And it's a structured group of investments. So I think the first ones that are due are in 2027, then 2028, 29. I mean, keeps on going out. And the idea is, one, his average on Bitcoin for MicroStrategy over time, I think it's on the order of like $56,000 per Bitcoin, something like that. So, and Bitcoin is about 100,000 right now. So he's got plenty of buffer. But now he's still buying the Bitcoin, and Bitcoin now he's buying at a much higher level. So it's interesting to see this arrangement. And apparently these bond offerings have been oversubscribed. So the bondholders have real interest in this, because it's a way, I think they perceive, kind of a more conservative way of entering the Bitcoin market. So I think it's kind of an interesting philosophy. Of course, the issue would be and apparently they're oversubscribed, so bondholders are chasing after it. So what could go wrong if you have too many going after something? Could that be problematic at any point? Of course, it could be problematic. Well, I don't know if of course, but I'm thinking it could be problematic if there's a crash in Bitcoin at some future point in time. That doesn't even have to be a permanent crash. Bitcoin is very volatile, maybe less volatile in the future if demand becomes so absurd because governments are involved. But it goes up and down, and it can go up and down dramatically. And if it happened to hit a bad patch at a time where there were a lot of bonds due, I can imagine that be a problem, because I think Saylor indicated he's not going to sell any. Michael Saylor is the CEO of MicroStrategy. He's not going to sell any of it. So I don't know how he's going to capitalize it. Maybe he's going to borrow against it, whatever, like he is now. But anyway, it's just interesting to me. Some people claim it to be a Ponzi scheme, or could be a Ponzi scheme. It could be if the assets dumped, because and I'm not predicting that, by the way, because of the demand on Bitcoin. But in real estate, it's happened many times. I've been involved in cases involving Ponzi schemes in real estate, where you have basically a principal borrows a bunch of money, either invests in real estate for a group or does something with regard to real estate. When real estate is taken off, money is available like, water. And if they use the money properly, then hopefully there's no problem when there's a crash. If in fact they've over leveraged and used their money improperly, perhaps they've used money for things they shouldn't have used it for, then you oftentimes get a absolute crash and people get nothing backed. My father-in-law was once involved he's deceased now. He was involved in a Ponzi scheme. He was just a little player, but it was some woman who had a long history of running funds. And what she did is she sold trust deeds. So trust deeds are, you're basically lending money and you get a security interest in a property, just like you have a mortgage against your house. That's a trust deed, but you could have more than one. So you might have one first with Bank of America, and then you might have a second one with a private company. Anyway, what she would do is she borrowed money and she would use it, and then she would give you a trust deed, and it would be recorded. But you didn't know that she had given that same trust deed to about 5 or 6 different people. So when the shit hit the fan, unfortunately, there was not enough equity to cover all the debt. And it was clear fraud, but nobody had reason to know until they had reason to know. I mean, I don't think anybody went out and these people were not sophisticated. They were sophisticated people, but they weren't sophisticated enough to go out and check. So anyway, Ponzi schemes happen. You can have disreputable people, and that just happens. And you have to be careful. You have to scrutinize your own life, and you have to be careful about who you deal with, and you have to overcome your own biases too, because that sometimes blocks you from kind of doing what you need to do. And all that stuff is hard, by the way. When I'm saying it's easy, but it's not. We're all influenced by emotion, and it makes us make mistakes, makes us cost us money. So that's crypto. So just be careful. By the way, starting today, I am selling, or I'm being sponsored by, I mentioned this at the top, being sponsored by KLACC, which stands for Not Legal Advice Crap Coins. So as of today, if you're interested in the KLACC, Not Legal Advice Crap Coins, I highly recommend them because I think they're the best crap coins going today. Anyway, brought to you again by KLACC. Last but not least, there was a earthquake off the coast of California. I'm in California, so was raised in California, so I've experienced a bunch of earthquakes. Not a ton. I mean, in my lifetime, 2 big ones, or 2 that stay with me. The rest I'm aware of, but with very little influence. Anyway, there was a 7.0 earthquake off of the coast of Eureka. Eureka is probably 400 miles from where I am. California is a big place. So Eureka's in Northern California, north of San Francisco, well north, near the northern end of the state. Very green, a lot of trees, and rains a lot. But this earthquake happened offshore. It was a 7.0, so that's a big earthquake. But if you noted, there was very little damage. I mean, there were very reports of very little damage, and why, and nobody really explained why. There was a tsunami warning, but that was it. So tsunamis, obviously that's a tidal wave that's caused by an earthquake that has a particular movement. Generally, though, it has to be 7.5 or greater to have a real risk of a tsunami. And this was 7, I think it was originally 6.6, then it was reported 7.3, then 7.0. But whatever the final number turned out to be, it was under 7.5. And if it created any kind of tsunami, it was minimal. And you could have like a 6-inch, literally, like a 6-inch tsunami that might have occurred in San Francisco, for example, in the Bay, but nothing of significance. So that's one way, is by these earthquakes. Another way is sometimes you have these giant landslides. If you can imagine, like, a whole mountain falling into the ocean, but I mean like a huge amount of material, or falling, displacing this huge amount of water, and that creating a tsunami. But it has to be you can imagine, it's got to be a lot of material with a lot of weight. So that's kind of the other common, I put. sort of way that tsunamis are created for earthquakes. So there was not a landslide, and it wasn't above 7.5. But there was no damage, 7.0. So why is that? Well, the reason that is, and this is of course not earthquake advice, is there's two, and there's more than two, but two main waves of energy that are produced by an earthquake. There's the P wave and the S wave. And the P wave is more of an up and down motion. And the S wave is a more side to side motion. The side to side motion is what tends to rip buildings apart. The up and down motion can cause damage, but the side to side motion kind of breaks buildings apart. And what's interesting is, so we have the two waves, the P wave and the S wave. The S wave's worse than the P wave. The S wave does not travel through water. So when you have an offshore earthquake, the S wave isn't part of the picture when it hits land. And because it's not a part of the picture, the motion you get on shore is much more limited and causes less damage generally. There's exceptions, but that's the general rule. And that, as a result, that's why in Eureka, in a 7.0 earthquake, there was almost no damage or very little damage. Nothing that you would expect in an earthquake of that size. So again, you remember, if it's offshore, you have less of a concern about a particular motion. You have more concern about water, potentially, if the earthquake is large enough. So that's why there wasn't great damage. And just to let you know, I didn't feel anything. When the San Francisco earthquake happened in the earthquake during the World Series in the late 80s or early 90s, maybe the early 90s, I was about 350 miles from San Francisco, approximately, or Oakland. It's where the earthquake actually happened. I was in a building in the San Fernando Valley, in a high rise, and I felt that one. Literally, it felt like I felt seasick. That was the emotion. I felt seasick, like I felt dizzy. That was the motion I was getting as the wave was coming through. It wasn't like violent motion or anything, just felt odd. And then like a minute later, because the World Series was on, they talked about it in the World Series, and then it made sense what I was feeling. So that was about 350 miles, and I felt that one. This one I did not feel at all. My son in Cupertino, which is about 60 miles from San Francisco, did not feel it. So again, this is an interesting take on earthquakes. I don't think anybody explained why there was no damage. They just focus on the tsunami. But it's interesting to know because we get a lot here. I've had a bunch of Malibus behind me. And this year or the last several months, we've had a bunch in Malibu, but nothing big. But a 4.7 that's, like a mile or two away from you, you feel that. It's strong. You feel it. It doesn't cause any damage, but you feel it. It gets your attention. It's very interesting. Anyway, there's a bunch of MMTLP people that are in Florida. I've been in contact with them. I guess they went to the Pulte conference. We'll see how that turns out. I hope they had a productive time. I think that's all I'm going to talk about today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, information, suggestions, please put them in the comments afterwards, after I post it. And again, thank you very much for your time. Hope this was informative. And if there's any subjects you want me to talk about, because I'll talk about anything, even if I don't know anything about it, but I'm happy to talk about it. Anyway, have a great Sunday, everybody. Be well, take care, and see you soon. And have a great